all sides fancy.
All right. Welcome to the Without Equal podcast. I'm your host, Rob McQueen. Welcome to episode 8, or what we'd like to call Fancy's Fireside Chat number 2. We're going to call this one Fore Country because we are joined today by two amazing individuals who founded a nonprofit called Fore Country, and there's a lot of other things to talk about more than just that. So again, joined by my co-host, Chris Perry, and my other co-host, Steve Cargill, co-founders of Cinepari, and the guests of the hour, Bobby and Leigh Tuttle. So Bobby, Leigh, I'm going to turn it over to you two. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll start this conversation off.
Yeah, Rob, Chris, Steve, thanks so much for having us on the show. Very excited to be here with you guys, and thanks for the time and the interest to talk to us today. I want to introduce my lovely wife, Leigh Tuttle. Leigh and I have been married for almost 10 years, so she's been a special operations spouse since we graduated the Special Forces Q course here at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and pretty incredible person. So I just want to let her kind of have the opportunity to say a few remarks about herself.
So again, thanks for having us on. Thanks for the interest in what Bobby and I are doing together to help our community. This is a big deal for us. Bobby and I have known each other for quite a while. Our parents, which I think is a great Army story, were friends in Germany. His dad was in the intense group.
Yeah, so he was in the Berlin detachment, and Leigh's dad was a member of the intelligence unit there at Berlin. So this was 1985, totally during the Cold War, which is a lot of parallels to what's going on right now. But what's pretty cool is our parents met, became close friends when they were both moving into Germany to start their careers there. And our moms instantly became friends when they were waiting for housing to open up at the BOQs. And both had our older sisters who are a year older than us. And yeah, moms instantly became friends. Dads wound up working together, and our families were like this, for years afterwards. And then Leigh and I actually reconnected, when she was in college, and then I was at First Special Forces Group at Fort Lewis, Washington. And then things kind of went from there, and we wound up getting married a few years later, which is pretty special.
Yeah, so we can always joke about with our friends now who we have similar kids at similar ages that we really get along with. We're we can do this again, we can have this, always the arranged marriage.
Yeah, we do.
So Army marriage, it's been really cool. Go ahead,
Leigh.
Rob.
That explains so much, because when we talked earlier, you said Uncle Phil, and I was like, that kind of rang a little differently. So I didn't realize that your dad and Phil were such good friends. So that brings a lot of this together. All right, that's a good. I like that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's really cool for us also to hear, I would say their stories and get their perspective on Army life. This was really great for us. So from there, though, Bobby graduated the Q course. We went to Okinawa. We knew going into it that Bobby would deploy right away to Afghanistan once we got to Okinawa. He left Okinawa. I didn't have any household goods, didn't really know people. You're driving on the other side of the road. You're just trying to figure it out. So I was really fortunate that I had made a good group of girlfriends, but also that one out in Okinawa, so First Special Forces Group, 1st Battalion, does a great job of bringing the wives together. And I was able to go to one wives function prior to Bobby leaving. So people knew that I was there. They were checking in on me. And that was a huge, I would say, just a help, right? It was also just someone checking on me. Also I found out I was pregnant when Bobby was getting on the plane in Germany to go to Afghanistan. There's another level of stress. And then from Okinawa, we did 3 years there, and I loved every minute of it. We went to Fort Polk, and we kind of, I would say, had some of those, we can get into the housing issues. That's where housing happened. And, I got to see a bit of how sometimes these big government contracts can affect us as military families, and that we really don't have a lot of pull to kind of lean into. And that was really hard and I think eye-opening for me. And from there, then we went to Fort Lewis, and that was a really great time. Now we're here at Fort Bragg. We're kind of like made the big circle.
All roads lead back to Bragg. That's kind of the moral of that story. But no, so we've been married for 10 years. Every location that we've been, I think when we were PCSing or doing a permanent change of station, every opportunity, Leigh really dove into figuring out how to better connect with the soldiers, with the unit, with the community. And each of those places are different. Okinawa, Japan, to Fort Polk, Louisiana, to Monterey, California, to Lakewood and Tacoma, Washington. So she's done an absolutely incredible job, really plugging in, instantly figuring out where she can help and fill gaps and provide resources or mentorship. And I think she's had a great set of mentors along the way. And what's been really nice is that through meeting guys like Chris and Rob here, or just other people that we've connected with, you learn so much from the people around you and their families and their family values and their takes on leadership. And you get to take a little bit of that exhaust every place you go, and then share that with the formation that you're going into when you're going into another command or leadership role or staff role, and just be part of that team and really be committed to that team. So.
Drive my best.
Yeah, like that's a big fight. And I mean, I think they make the military housing makes the news, I want to say, every month for the issues that exist inside of it at times. But I really do want to go back because Leigh, you did a good job of really kind of going through your path as a military spouse and diving into, I mean, I know the exact feeling. Like I left for my first deployment to Iraq when my wife was 4 months pregnant. Like and that's a thing that I think only military spouses can remotely understand, because a lot of people listening to the podcast, that's not something that would even register in their mind of like, oh, so your wife is pregnant, you're now leaving for a year and a half. Let's see how that goes. But I do really want to go back, because you did a good job of kind of painting this arc of your guys' life together, and even starting from military families. Where you're at now, and we'll get to how you guys are giving back, but where you're at now, do you think that journey has really kind of helped shape your identity?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, as military spouses, and I would say as military wives, think about that. Like, we went through something that most people would say is almost like a traumatic experience, right? Like, I'm left alone in Okinawa, Japan. Like, I just got my license to drive on the other side of the road. I'm learning how to convert money. I'm learning how to go out in the economy to do things. I'm living off of base, right? My husband's deploying, and I'm just trying to figure this all out. I don't have my household goods. I'm trying to figure out how to call over to, the storage facility that has my household goods in North Carolina, right? Like, I think to most of, the public, it would be like, this is like a really hard situation to be in. However, I think that sometimes us as military wives, and especially in our community, is like, you have such great mentors and such great people to rely on. And even before we got there, I had women reaching out to me saying, whatever you need, here are some great things to start kind of like preparing for before you come overseas. And that was just the 100% helped me to be set up for success before Bobby left, because there's always that kind of implication of like, if you don't feel ready, like, I'm not going to leave, right? Like, you don't want to be that way, just like, you need to stay back. But I did feel ready, and it was because of like these other women who came before me who helped set me up for success.
Yeah, the military spouse thing has been an interesting, and I'm kind of hogging the conversation on this because it's been a really interesting experience for me, having left the military and kind of watching my wife go through that transition of no longer having that network you just talked about of the military, which is a tight network, especially in the special operations community, but also kind of trying to find a new identity that is not that military spouse. Mm-hmm. And so, because I ended up traveling a ton post-military as a humanitarian, and so now when I was leaving, she didn't have that network to fall back on. And it became like, it was really tough and really hard for her in the thought process. So I wanted to just touch on that because I don't think a lot of people understand or really have a feeling for how hard it is to be a military spouse. And I just wanted to highlight that piece. But
yeah, no, I think I would
real quick,
say,
if I could, because
Rob, really quick, what we talked about earlier was that, like, you know, on the deployment side and things, is that, like, it is really hard. You know, like, one of my big things, and that all these girls, we all talk about, is when your husbands are gone, and especially during those hard years of, like, the Afghanistan campaigns, it's like, when your Amazon man rings your doorbell, your heart kind of sinks sometimes, right? And it's like, I mean, I don't think that happens for most people. But that's where our minds go, and it's the chances are very slim. However, like, that's where you go, and that's how you live for those, like, 6 to 7, or I mean, I never had to do one of those 15 months ones, and I'm so thankful that I didn't. But like that I'm sure was extremely hard.
Well, it's awesome how you're able to describe that you're able to harness those resources in order to build your resilience. You highlighted very well a couple of key building blocks to manage in building up resilience. One of them being surrounding yourself with great people, good people, and in doing so remotely too, ahead of time, being able to harness that network of other spouses already there who are ready and willing to help, and being willing to accept that help in your transition. Yes, it's one of those situations, and I feel for military spouses that you could easily fall into despair, really, and want to recede back. But you took the bull by the horns, so to speak, and really grasped onto those resources, and were able to overcome and build your resiliency.
Yeah, and I also think it's a lot of, like, just having I would say, just the gumption to put yourself out there, right? Like, you just have to do it. And sometimes it's kind of awkward, and you have to just, like, you're going to meet a new group of girlfriends, and, like, they're girlfriends that will open you with open arms. But yeah, it's just different. And I think that this is the lifestyle, like, this doesn't happen if you're working for corporate America, right? Like, you guys are working for a big, corporate job in America. Like, you aren't all going to go away for 6 months at a time, and we are all kind of just relying on each other to figure it out. And I just think it's it's different, but it's also, like, it's a huge I also think a positive experience that's happened in my life. Just this weekend we had my girlfriend, who was like my best gal pal from Okinawa, who just came and stayed for 2 days, and we picked up, like, we've always been together, even though we hadn't seen each other for years. So I think there's something to be said about just, kind of what you go through and who you surround yourself with, and how the Army life does provide you with, like, really cool experiences that most people don't really get to kind of experience.
One thing that I think we've taken away as a couple, so Leigh kind of described graduating the Q, my graduation Q course. We were newlyweds, got out to Okinawa, Japan. I immediately left within, like, 10 days of getting there to tag on to the Afghanistan rotation that 1-1, 1st Special Forces Group, 1st Battalion was part of. But you're on the tropical island. Everyone's out there. You're 14 hours from anything. The time difference is, it's night and day, literally night and day from, the United States. But one of those forcing functions going into a Special Forces ODA was, like, you just all came together. You were there for holidays when you couldn't leave the island. Everybody was at, kids' soccer games, or, whole families came to promotion ceremonies. It was very easy to get together, and that really instilled just a lasting bond, or, like, really harnessed that culture. While you were out there, everyone's kind of going through the same thing, so you collectively rely on one another. And so as a couple, really every time we've moved, because of the Army, to a next assignment or next unit, we try to just remember and see if we can instill something similar with that culture. And whether that's forcing people to get together or just showing up. A lot of times it's just showing up for things, promotion ceremonies or changes of command or responsibility, just being there and ensuring that the family comes too. And that's one of the things we try to instill every place that we go to make sure it sets a good example for the people that we're around.
And for our kids, I think too, it's a big thing.
Yeah, it makes a great point. And, it's interesting. And it's great timing too, because the last few casts that we've done, we've talked a lot about military and police and speaking about some of those things that are incredibly difficult for people who have not experienced it to understand. And we always try to relate this back in leadership terms or put it in something that's more easily digestible to private sector that may not, they don't necessarily understand about their business moving them and telling them where they're going to live and who they're going to hang out with and when their significant other may or may not be there. There's a lot of stressors that puts on, right? But one of the points that kind of came out from what you guys are talking about is sense of community, right? That seems like it lasted, like helped you guys survive some of the more difficult times. And that does translate into almost all aspects of leadership roles or company organizations, et cetera, right? Is finding a way to establish a sense of community that you matter to each other, building a group of friends, making it more like a family. I mean, Leigh, from what you were saying, it sounds like that's really helped you survive some of those more difficult times when Bobby may or may not have been there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that, I look back and I think about, just those hard days when Bobby was gone and I'm, pregnant, just like trying to figure out how to get through this. And, the woman who was here over the weekend was like, to be like kind of corny, like she was my battle buddy, right? When like my husband was gone, like she was my gal pal that I would call and ask these questions. But also like when there are like there are some terrible times that you go through and like the wives do, like we rally, like the spouses rally and like knowing that, if something were to happen to Bobby, like to know that I would be taken care of, like is a big deal.
Yeah, it's great to hear that you're, not only taking part in the community, but you're contributing and giving back to the community. And then also, too, in doing that, you're taking what is essentially negative energy of, missing Bobby, being away, being separate, and investing that energy, originally negative, turning it into a positive by giving back to that community.
Yeah, well, I think like it's super important, because I think that even, for you guys, when you all are gone, right? Like, I mean, and this can just kind of bounce in like to that housing issue, right? It's like, if you know that your family is having a hard time, you don't perform. Like you are not ready. You are staying up at night and then it just spirals. And it's like, all right, now I'm even worrying about my husband even more because I know that he's worrying about me. And it's like, I need to be out there, like making myself better, making myself happy, like going out there and getting involved so that my husband is not worrying about me. Because if he's worrying about me, that's not doing actually anything for me. So like, let's figure out how to make myself like happy and put myself out there. Because I did have a few weeks where I was like, just like, oh my God, I'm laying on a government couch. Like, I don't know anyone. And then it's like, all right, like I gotta stop this. Like, let's figure this out because I can't live like this. So then it's like, I started making friends and it was like, you just have to do that. And you have to do that when we moved to Fort Bragg, right? Like, it's like, no one wants to get orders to Fort Bragg. Like, no offense, guys. Like, it's not the best.
Yeah.
So then, like, it's like, you just
Everybody's
have to you just have to figure out how to make yourself happy so that you as a couple and you as a family unit can be happy, because it's also not good for their, like, I would say, like, military readiness. Like, it's not good for anyone to be like that. So I think it's a big deal to put yourself out there and to be happy. And there's, at the end of the day, there's like, so many resources to do that. And women, like, in our unit, were so welcoming. And, but my big thing is, like, I knew that if Bobby knew that I was unhappy, it would bother him. And he was away to, do anything about it.
No, huge.
Right. And those distractions can have catastrophic effects on a serious job, right? I mean, the less efficient you are performing those tasks, in addition to the fact that it's probably going to make you stay away longer. But also is the shared experiences, right? I mean, when you're going through that stuff, especially if you're alone, and this translates to kind of all of life, I think, when you think you're going through something alone, it's a lot harder. But knowing that there are that many other people that are going through the same thing that you are, reaching out and making those kind of relationships, I imagine, eases that burden a little bit. I know it does for me.
The bond of suffering too on the backside, right? The bond, like when you go through something tough together, it builds a bond. Like you said, Leigh, you hadn't talked to your friend in over a year, but when you go through that hard time together, you absolutely build a bond that you cannot build in 10 years of easy times. Like it's just the way human nature works and the way relationships are made. Mm-hmm. That's really good. I kind of want to dig, because I think we talked a lot about community, and Leigh, that's been kind of the theme of this. So I want to kind of pivot this conversation over, and I really want to take this time, like, let's dig into Fore Country. Like, let's look at what you two have built together, give our audience an introduction to Fore Country, and then let's go through the story of how this thing came to be and where you guys plan to take it.
Yeah. So Fore Country, we got our initial paperwork in 2020. So you can imagine that in itself was a bit difficult, especially when we're trying to build kind of a network and a community for soft men and women. So we were over at the Naval Postgraduate School, and I was able to see my husband, have some time for himself and get involved in some organizations. And I saw just how his professional development and his personal development grew through being involved in the NPS and Naval Postgraduate School's golf club. And I was extremely impressed by, these people that he was able to just really get to know and who wanted to get to know him. And I thought, this is something that honestly, I think that every SOF and military personnel should be able to kind of branch into. So from there, I just thought, how do I make this happen at another location? We're moving. So we started in Tacoma, Washington. We started doing a few events with a local club up there. And all my feedback from both parties, from the civilian and from the military, was just like, this was great. We need to keep doing this. I got to meet these people. I've never had an interaction like this. I'm asking about, these different industries that I don't know any about, but also like the civilians, their big, takeaway was, I had no idea that you all spoke a foreign language, or that, how, personable you were, or how, educated you were. So it was just a lot of me kind of like thinking in my mind, like, all right, so there actually is this huge disconnect. So yeah, from there, we just kind of made it a bigger venture, and we're trying to grow, and we are growing. I think it's but it's been really fun. Like, golf is a great medium because you're out with someone for 5 hours and you get to know a lot about them, like some kinds of highs and lows, I'd imagine. But it's been really great. And I think that Bobby can speak a little bit more because he participates a bit in some of the events. But yeah, I am really thankful for you guys to ask about that. And it's been a really good, we've gone from coast to coast. So it's been really good.
Yeah, so to complement that, it talks a little bit about the background and kind of how Fore Country started. But, Fore Country is a 501c3 nonprofit with the mission to bridge that civilian-military divide. And what that divide is it's really I don't know what our military is doing, and I've never met these people, or I'm very unsure, and all I can relate to is what I see in the news or Hollywood. And on the reciprocal side, it's our military, just not, military service members, not knowing exactly what industry is out there and, what it takes to be successful in the civilian sector. So that's really kind of what that divide is. And what we do is it's pretty simple. We take active duty special operations people and put them on the golf course with accomplished industry and civilian leaders, whatever their backgrounds may be. They've been successful in whatever careers they've had. And we promote them to go out and enjoy a round of golf together. And there's a lot of sharing. There's a lot of this is what special operations is, and then there's a lot of what do you do? How did you get to your current position? And the why is to really help bridge that gap, promote a sense of community, really allow for fellowship and mentorship across the civilian military side, to get rid of some of those special operations fallacies that people think they may have, or the unknown about what special operations does, and then promote a network that special operations member can rely on when it's appropriate and it's time for him or her to transition from the service into the civilian private sector. So that's what it is. If you've ever played a round of golf, you go out with somebody you've never played with before, and you play out for 4 hours and 15 minutes on a beautiful course. At the end of the day, you're shaking hands on the 18th green. You got a friend for life. You've got somebody who's now in your Rolodex that you can rely on, and you've shared stories, a little bit of trials and tribulations on the course, but you've really got some insight of that person, their values, how they approach, stress or anxiety. They hit about bad shot, on the course, how do they bounce back? So all those kind of unspoken things that happen. And then you've got inside jokes. You've got, kind of this bonding experience you just went through for 4 hours and 15 minutes. And then golf is this amazingly beautiful, therapeutic, sport with it's a pastime here. And you've got a lot of history and a rich history and great places you can play all across the world, play at any age. So it's this perfect medium that when we were out at the Naval Postgraduate School, people literally put their arm around me and said, Bobby, let's go play a round of golf. And then I was invited back, whether it was because I was interesting to play with, or I was fun, or they liked the operational experiences or the stories I was sharing from being in Iraq or Afghanistan. And, that's really allowed for us to have some pretty incredible civilian champions of our family. And we just want to share that with other members of the special operations community. So that's really what Fore Country is.
Yeah, that's an awesome model. And, hearkening back to what Chris talked about with shared experiences, I'm sure that you probably have some guys and gals go out there that have never played golf before in their life, or maybe very few times, like myself. I've played golf 5 times in my life, and 1 out of those 5 times I hit a Chevy Suburban. So, with that, I'm sure that you probably pair up some people that don't know how to play golf with each other, and they muddle through it, and that's a shared experience for them. And then they're able to build an even stronger bond with that shared experience.
That's
that's not uncommon. So we've got some great people who are very legit golfers. I call myself a golf enthusiast. I'm a father of 2 small kids and a husband to this lovely lady with a day job in the special operations community. So time is limited. So when I go out, it's purposeful. And I tell guys and gals, it's not about the golf. It's about the time, the quality time spent together with this person, the civilian who's been, whatever they did, an entrepreneur, a small business owner, a large business owner, whatever they did in life, they've got something to share. And you're going to go, one, have access to them for that amount of time, for that round of golf, where you guys can just let it flow, just free flow, and see where the conversation takes you. And being a special operations member, and you guys all here as well, you're going to get some good nuggets of advice or mentorship out of them, and they're going to be intrigued with the stories you're going to tell and the why you joined special operations and the places that the United States of America sent you. And for them, they're going to leave with an impression of holy smokes, I didn't know. I had no idea how impressive these people are, or just the investment that our nation is putting into soft people and the way they think about stuff. And a lot of times at the end of the day, it's holy smokes, give me a call whenever it's time for you to leave the military, because I want to hire you. Or I want to have you come talk to my team, because just the way you speak about things, your drive, your energy, the way you prioritize life, family, and work, those are all things that members of the civilian sector, want to have in their organizations as well. Help instill that culture and make their company or their team as best as they can be. So that's what we're doing.
That was a phenomenal
pitch,
there's
Bobby.
A big,
for me, as a wife, a big stigma that I want to bring to the fold of So a lot of times we'll get either, oh, like I didn't know that people in the military were educated and were as eloquent as you all are. So like that to me is a red flag. Like what the American public doesn't know that, right? And then the other thing is that a lot of times like people will come up and be like, are these guys wounded warriors? And it's like, well, like yeah, they are. Like there's like physical wounds and invisible wounds with these gentlemen, and women, but this is about showing them as a value added to one society and to any sort of business that is interested in them. So I think that's a big thing that I'm seeing now as early on. We've only been around for a year and a half. Like that is a stigma that is happening with us, is that there is like this big wounded warrior kind of like I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but people just think that there's like some, like maybe not a value added, but maybe just a charity case.
I think to kind of clarify some of that, we coming out of 20 years of war, a huge amount of our wounded, ill, and injured service members, and there's incredible organizations that are dedicated to take care of our folks. But at the end of the day, I think everybody, once you leave the military, you want to be a productive member of society. You want to go out, especially in the soft environment, you can crush it. You crushed it in special operations. All right, next, let's go crush it in whatever else we can do. And so a lot of those things we get asked, like, I think some of our civilian members are intimidated or just not sure exactly how to act around some of our wounded, ill, or injured members. And a lot of our active duty folks are, have injuries, whether they're visible or not. It's okay. Like, get to know our people. Their stories are incredible. Their families,
get to know each other.
Yeah, their families are incredible, and we have so much to bring to the table. And I think it's just a way that we can highlight what the Special Operations Regiment is doing, the quality of people we've produced, and just again, at some point in time, I'm going to have to hang up that uniform just like some of you gentlemen. And I want to be able to go out and crush it and have talked to these people who've done that as well in the civilian sector, and take that to my own and go kind of take that next ridge line. So that's what we're doing.
I think you guys are doing a really good job of, one, closing that divide. That's part of your mission statement. I think that's really important. But you're also kind of engaging that narrative that you're trying to break down, right? And if you look at anything in the media these days, I mean, if you ask anyone what's a slogan you've seen about veterans lately, they're probably gonna be like, 22 kill, 21 per day, the number of suicides, the number of damage, the VA is broken. It is this constant narrative that all of our veterans are broken and damaged and injured, and it doesn't go to the strengths of what this veteran can do for you. And there's a few organizations that are getting on it, but I really applaud you guys for taking a really unique approach to trying to break down that narrative and build that, close that divide. I think it's a great mission set. And
bigger picture.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rob. Bigger picture. It's a great example of what we need more of, right? Is the discourse. I mean, it immediately, for whatever reason, what popped up in my head was I think the old Mark Twain quote about travel being the fatal to prejudice and bigotry and narrow-mindedness. And of course, travel both figuratively and literally is difficult right now. Right. I mean, what with the pandemic and everything, but what it comes down to is discourse and talking to people or experiencing people from different backgrounds. Right. And so because it goes the same way too. Veterans or military members have perceptions of people in the private sector, civilians and everything else. So the way we break some of that, honestly, and I mean, writ large, that's what we need more of nowadays is people talking to people in, good environments of differing backgrounds to really break down some of those barriers. We see it right now. People they sequester themselves, whether they realize it or not, and have trouble speaking with people. I mean, just having, much less playing a game of golf, right? Best case scenario with somebody from a different background. So, I mean, it's a small example of what we I think need more of nowadays. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll jump on that and say that, you mentioned it being therapeutic, and then also too, after developing that relationship, being productive later on. This goes a long way in preventing those sad archetypes. Like when I was at the 82nd, hearing about the 30-year sergeant major that retired and was dead as a doornail 3 months later. You want to prevent those sort of things. And I think that this is a great model to absolutely get at that sort of thing and prevent any sort of tragedy like that, and make people productive on that, the other side of that ridge line like you described.
Oh, Steve, I think that's a great point. And just to, again, follow up with that. So, started out in Monterey, Monterey, California when I was a grad student because I had time. I had time to focus on the family, time to go out and better at my golf game. But you're co-located in Pebble Beach, which is, a mecca for golf in the area, and was just drawn to it. The history, the golden era, of golf in the 19-teens and 1920s. And, it's this beautiful area. But then also you kind of realize that it's such a worldly pastime that goes everywhere. We went from Fort Lewis up to Fort Lewis, Washington, and then out here to Fort Bragg with the Pinehurst area. And so these, the game of golf is absolutely incredible. But what we've kind of been able to do too, and really still that sense of community, is we meet people from the community who, because of September 11th, have never been on the base before because of security measures. And so, hey, please, I would love to have you to a change of command or a Memorial Day ceremony. And we have never had anybody say no when we've invited them to take part in some of those events, whether that's, 1st Special Forces Group up in Washington or over here at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And then kind of on the other side too, so we've had, those civilian mentors now really invested in my family. But as you see things unfolding with the news, Russia, Ukraine right now, I now have civilian friends who are reaching out. Hey, are you guys okay? Just checking in, just you're on our minds. We're thinking of you, whatever's going on. Same thing happened with, the evacuation of Afghanistan back in September of last year. Our civilian friends who are, we don't know a ton of what's going on. We just see what in the news, but we're checking in on you. And it's not only now our teammates in the team room or the ODA team room, but it's also these people who touched your lives, very briefly at your time stationed at whatever base, but they care and they reach out because they're genuinely interested. And that's something I think has made a big impact on us here as the Tuttle family.
Because sometimes when you think that you were like, I'm just alone in Okinawa, like my husband's gone, it's like, well, actually, no, like people do care. People actually really do care. So I think that is a really big thing. And I think it's a really big thing that, the Army, I think the military overall can expand upon is like maybe some sort of like civilian engagement, because I think that it would do well for families.
And with Fore Country, 2021, we had 10 highly successful events across the United States, from everything from West Coast to East Coast down to Florida. We've impacted, or at least we brought, 75 special operators together. So that was across SEALs, Marine Special Operations, Raiders, Green Beret Heavy, just because that's, it's where we're here at Fort Bragg, but Civil Affairs, PSYOP, Air Force Special Tactics Squadrons guys, and pararescue jumpers from the Air Force side. Again, impactful. They've met countless number of civilians that they would never ever really had access to, and allowed them to just develop their own relationships, and gave them a great experience that they can be proud of. They can kind of talk about and share and say, I've set some goals now, because when I get out, I'm ready. I want to be like that person that I just met and spent time with. For 2022, we're hoping to do some great things across the country as well. And we really appreciate you guys, allowing us to kind of use this as a nice little platform just to complement Fore Country.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear that, the effects are so widespread. I was curious about, how moving from coast to coast and having established, your idea for this in one place and moving into another, how that would, manifest and how that would turn out. But, you're really taking that global nature, worldly nature of golf to heart and making this an expeditionary thing that you can do anywhere.
It's awesome.
Once you experience it once, it's like, yeah, I get it. And again, tough to put into words, but we've got a great number of people who are participating, and we'll continue to grow and again bring good awareness to our special operations people, and make sure that our civilians know who we are, what we do, and the value that we can bring when it's our time to get out of the military as well.
You say tough putting it into words, but you guys have done a very good job of putting it into words. So, like, I think you've sold it amazingly well. I'm excited at some point to come out and do this. I'll be out of Bragg later this or in a few months here, Bobby. So I'm going to hit you up. Yeah. Well, and you said it's a good stress. You know,
it's been really fun.
You can see how people manage stress. At about hole number 10, my stress level is going to be through the roof. So we'll see if we can pair it up the right way. Good putter throw.
It's funny
because
James Blackburn's MO is like, hey, when he hits a crummy shot, he just turns to the civilian and is like, hey, what's your favorite drink?
I can see that.
It instantly turns into a little bit of like insight into like who they are, and then all right, let's talk about what's on your reading list right now.
But also, like, what a great way! Like, what a great segue, though, right? Like, you learn about that. Like, you just ask them that question. You're like, oh, okay, well, you like this.
See, what you don't understand with James, though, is as he's doing that, this is like James Bond. He's got one of the other golf balls with the same number in his pocket. They're walking down the fairway, and he just drops it out like, oh, it must have hit a tree, bounced back in. I know James way too well to buy any of that. Yeah, James always has an angle. I know it's in there somewhere. And
he's like, at the end of the day, he's like, I'm a combat diver. Like, leave me alone.
He's a dive guy. He just wants to go spearfishing, and the fact that you got him playing golf just because he can't spearfish every day. So, oh man, that's awesome.
Yes.
So I feel like I think we've covered just an amazing thing. I'm so excited. But I feel like I buried the lead a little bit here too, Bobby, because we more or less in the beginning just kind of sold you as Leigh's arm candy here. So let's talk about, I agree 100%. But I do want to give Bobby a little bit to talk about Pineland Underground, because I totally forgot to even mention in the beginning that you're the host of the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and Schools official podcast, which I can't believe all these different commands. Like a guy I used to work for is the current senior enlisted for SOCOM. Now SOCOM has a podcast. So this is the new venue for everything. So tell us a little bit about Pineland Underground, because I've listened to a few episodes and it's amazing. The caliber of people and stories you get to bring on is ridiculous. But tell us a little bit how this came around, who came up with the idea, and then talk us through what you've got going on with Pineland Underground, and probably tell everybody what Pineland is, because it probably doesn't make sense to anybody that's not from the Army Soft community.
No, I love it. So Pineland Underground is as Rob had mentioned, so it's the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School. So the force provider and production entity for Army Special Operations. It's our official podcast. So I currently work in our Commanders Initiatives group, the SIG, at the John F. Kennedy, at SWIC, the Special Warfare Center and School. And essentially we get to really kind of look across the formation, figure out how we can better inspire, better connect, and better tell our story. And so was asked to kind of take this on as an initiative or a project. We had a really good podcast called Knowledge Wins, but I don't think we'd done as best of a job as we could really getting it out there. And so we kind of looked, our SIG team reflected a little bit and said, what's something that's unique to be going through Army Special Operations assessments and selections and the qualification course. And really what came down to was this mythical place called Pineland. So Pineland Underground is the name of the podcast. Pineland is the mythical country we all deploy to here at Fort Bragg. It encompasses 17 different counties. Our culmination exercises are all located in Pineland. And it allows us to really put into practice the skills and all the training that we've received from our about year and a half coming through here at Fort Bragg. So we found a really great name for it. Our logo encompasses the resistance flag, and a lot of it is resistance operations or unconventional warfare that we practice in Pineland. So it's got a great name. And then, so I'm actually a co-host. We brought in Sergeant Major Chuck Ritter. Chuck is a longtime 3rd Special Forces Group, kind of a graybeard now, but he's the deputy at the Non-Commissioned Officer Academy, doing a fantastic job. And we really hit it off. We did an interview together. He's received 3 Purple Hearts. He's a valorous Silver Star recipient, which is extremely impressive for his actions in combat. And we really hit it off and said, how can we team up and make this thing better? And so what we've done is we've basically sat down and said, how can we use this to project the narrative of Army Special Operations, tell the stories of our people, demonstrate the investment that is made in our people and really what we're doing, but also kind of all tie it in and allow that as an inspirational, motivational way to describe the people, the places, and the missions that have occurred through Army Special Operations. So we've got a great number of recordings that we've done, kind of already racked up. Again, all coming out here in the next couple weeks. But everything from Nick Lavery, Nick Lavery is an amputee who got back to his team from 3rd Special Forces Group. He was wounded in a green on blue incident a few years back, but got back to his team, got back to combat, recently graduated the Special Forces Dive School, and is absolutely crushing it now as a warrant officer. And really just telling these stories of these incredible people, but also talking about how we send people up to the Naval Postgraduate School to get Masters of Science, talking about how we tie in with innovation in Silicon Valley as special operations people. And then we've even done one with Robin Sage that, people here in North Carolina hear about this unconventional warfare exercise that occurs of creating a resistance in North Carolina. Well, it's all fictional, but we want to make sure that we can kind of tell some good stories of the people who go through that realistic training. And then we put a really that professional face on it of the people who come out and earn, the right to call themselves Army Special Operations Warriors. So that's what it's about. And then Pineland Underground is available on all major podcast platforms. So Spotify, Apple, and
No shame here.
Good pitch. Good pitch.
Hey, we get it. We're learning all the same stuff right now.
But one thing I think is kind of impressive is what I think what you guys are doing here, and it's so commanders have professional reading lists, right? Our commander has an amazing professional reading list. It allows us to get together under his kind of purview and have discussions about what we just read and how we can apply lessons to our place of work as warfighters. And a lot of that comes down to leadership, right? And I love this. The Army's definition of leadership is the activity of influencing people by providing purpose, direction, and motivation to accomplish the mission and then improve the organization. And there's incredible stories out there from people in the Army, in special operations, in the private sector, working for incredible organizations, small entrepreneur startups. Like, we can all learn something here. And again, that's I think you guys are doing a great job in discussing leadership across the force. And that's you can never learn enough about how to be a better leader for an organization or even a better teammate, so your leader has less pressure on them and can provide you with the right mission command that you need to get the job done.
Well put, Bobby. Seriously, well put, brother. This is why you're a co-host of Pineland Underground. That's just clean and to the point. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting for us having come together and kind of starting to do this thing. And, we started with the business and then brought the podcast on as kind of a way to build brand awareness and honestly a way for us to kind of address different topics. And it's starting to take shape, and it's a really, I'm enjoying the hell out of it. And I think Steve and Chris are as well, even though we had to kind of like pull Chris along to be like, hey, I'm sorry, your face is going to actually have to be in social media and on things, which for the last 5 years we've been working together, Chris is always like, would you stop? Like, come on. But I think you're getting comfortable now, Chris.
Radio.
Do you find any,
not my favorite thing.
Do you find any kind of like, I don't know what's the word, not hardship or just like, I don't know, like, is it hard with you guys not all together physically when you want to have a meeting? Like, do you guys
No, I would say that we do a fairly good job of getting together here virtually. We were able to build this thing completely virtually until we all got together physically over the course of a year. We finally got together after 9 months and did our pilot back in October. So I think that we've done well, but we could absolutely optimize more by being together physically. But it's just not necessary in the modern with modern dynamics as they are.
I think that's one of the things too. Is when you look at the business world, you're looking at I think something like 75 to 80% of companies that went remote during COVID are not going back to brick and mortar. So it's this shift in dynamic. And so again, we're making mistakes and learning. And if we were all sitting in the same room, we could probably be a little more productive. But I think also learning to work through this medium is helping us really understand and kind of shift our leadership from that very like, hey, lead from the front style, physical, I'm there and I'm leading, to more of, decentralized and remote style of leadership. And it has its own challenges. And having, managed some remote teams in the past, it's its own piece. And I think that's just the way the world's going. And this is a good way for us to kind of grow and help shape our classes and our instruction at Senpare to focus on that as well, to be able to manage those scenarios.
And also, too, it's been a really great way to bond together, too, because, Rob, unfortunately, is on the other side of the country. He's one of my best friends, and I'd like to be a whole lot closer, and this, helps it out. So, it really, makes me happy to be a part of this because I surround myself with awesome people here.
That's so important. I love that you said that, Steve. It's surrounding yourself with great people. As I got here to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Leigh and I had not been here since since I was in the Q course, qualification course. So 10, 12 years. It's a long time. And you really you gravitate towards people every place that you've been stationed, and you kind of, you keep in touch with those people. And when I got back to North Carolina, to really the mothership, this is Starship Enterprise of Army Special Operations Command, 1st Special Forces Command, JSOC's here.
And his 82nd.
82nd,
Yeah.
SWIC, everything is here. And once I got here, I realized, it's all about surrounding yourself with those good people. And I realized how many damn fine people there are here. And it's, as you approach a project like Pineland Underground, for example, or you're just trying to get to know the area or the installation itself, they're absolutely incredible people everywhere you go. And you gravitate to them, you connect with them, and you get to know them. And those are the people you want to have in your hip pocket to call for advice. You call for suggestions. Really that Rolodex when you move into that next leadership position, or you move into the next project that you're working on for the Army. And I love that you said that, because that's one of the things we always try to kind of think about, is surrounding ourselves with the right people to continue going forward.
Absolutely. I think that's the old saying too, is if you're the smartest person in the room, find another room. Right? Like, you never want to be the smartest person in the room. You always want to be with people that challenge you and push you forward. And you want to find the people that are going to support you and be there for you. And that's a challenge in life. And I think once you work your way into the military or the special operations community, it's a lot easier to find those people, Bobby. Like, I think you're spot on with that. Yeah.
So, Bobby,
this has been a
I'm
good
curious.
Conversation. Sorry.
Yeah.
Steve,
so
go.
Bob, I'm curious with your endeavor with the Pineland Underground. You're marrying two worlds together: the special operations with the public, right? And so, I'm curious, how do you make that antithetical dynamic of the confidential nature of special forces, underscored by the slogan, the quiet professionals, and the more open, public nature of the podcast work?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I would almost say that. The podcast was already in existence before I kind of took on the project. But I think what we did was, what's the purpose of a podcast is to inform, to motivate, to inspire, and then also to remember, to tell those stories so that we don't forget of the people who came before us or their vignettes or their missions. And, we have gotten some kind of kickback of, you guys are supposed to be the quiet professionals. And the question would really be is, why are we honing in on specific individuals, who have had acts of valor or who bounce back? And for me, it's like, why would we not? This is a person. And again, you look across the formation, you could go to any special operator and you're going to be inspired just talking to them. Why did you join SOF? What have you done to get here? What sacrifices have you made? I guarantee the list is incredible. But if you talk to any of the people that we've interviewed, it's because that story specifically embodies that warrior spirit, the soft truths. People are more important than hardware is the first thing that comes to mind. And that person has gone through something, or they in combat relied on their training that we taught them, and they did the right thing, and they made a decision that they're going to live with, but they've learned from it. And we, all of us as observers and listeners can learn from that as well. So it's an opportunity for us to really be inspired, share those stories, and again, promote to the public that this is what special operations does. And if we don't know what we're doing, then how are we supposed to know what our tax dollars are going towards? Or how is an organization on the outside supposed to know if they should hire somebody? And it just helps to really level that playing field of what we are, who we are, and where we come from.
I like it because, the way you broke it down, what it really boils down to is being a form of mentorship. And these guys will be sought out later on by people wanting to know more, wanting to, refine their craft as those who have gone before them did. And, that's really valuable and powerful.
I think sharing stories across the force.
That we're doing actually here at SWIC. So we're kind of testing this out. It's gonna occur on the 2nd of March. But for the Army Special Operations Pre-Command course, so this course that we're bringing all of these battalion and brigade level command select list people who are about to command at that level in SOF. So very impressive people, especially selected for it. We're doing a panel called Leading Leaders. And if you kind of think about it, once you hit that battalion and brigade level, or even the kind of the Special Forces company level, you're leading other leaders. You've instilled leadership down to the captains, down to the Special Forces team. And how do you best do that? And so what we kind of reflected on were how do we take a right group of people, soft in general, soft leaders at that really high echelon, leaders in the sporting industry, leaders in kind of the tech and startup, academia, as well as really industry. And we put together a phenomenal panel. We've got the president of Hendricks Motorsports at NASCAR. You've got General Ken Tova, who you led at USASOC, Army Special Operations Command. We've got Mr. Bill Mines, who's the executive at Walmart. And so really all these kind of people, echelons, that are going to be able to describe what they've done to successfully lead or inspire other people in their organization to make their organizations as best as possible. And I'm really excited to kind of see the dialogue that occurs and what kind of lessons we can pull out and parallels from the warfighter to, say, industry. I think that's something that's kind of special that we can try to do there.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. I think that's going to be amazing, Bobby. Like, really, that is.
Sorry, Lee just cut out for...
No worries. You guys are at home. It's your day off. Like, you took the time to come in and talk to us on that. So I can't say thank you enough for doing that. And your dog has been amazing since the beginning of the podcast. So it's been great. I'm trying to think of where to go. Like, I really, we hit the key points we wanted to chat on, and I am stoked for Fore country and excited to listen and see what comes from Pineland Underground. So, Bobby, unless you have anything else you want to drive on, we'll go around the horn here and wait till Leigh gets back because we want to make sure we give Leigh the last word, 100%. But
if you guys are cool with it, I'd love to hit on military housing.
Yes, that's something that I think Leigh needs her time to dig into that one because that's a
absolutely.
I want to hear that story.
I was hoping she'd make it back here for that.
Yeah.
If I could prime that, so Leigh's a pretty humble individual. We spent 14 months at Fort Polk, Louisiana. So that's where where Rob McQueen and Chris Perry and I all worked together at SOT-D.
I know you guys were just having bros 14 months.
It was a good time. But so we were there for 14 months, and we were in a pretty bad situation living on base. Something that impacted us pretty severely.
Yeah.
In our family, and our boss basically it was like, hey, I know you guys. There's nothing we can really do at our level, so I encourage you to lead.
And thank God
get
for
out of
him.
here.
He was the best.
That's Colonel Scott Malone, who's the deputy of the first
so
group now.
Wonderful.
We were treading water, really bad for the family. And then Leigh, once we got up to Fort Lewis, Washington, was able to advocate on behalf of other people who are going through something similar. So that really, that common bond of going through a very crappy situation, not being able to figure out what to do, bringing awareness to it up at that higher levels in Capitol Hill. And the long story is, through her efforts, she was actually nominated and recognized as the 2019 Fort Lewis Army Spouse of the Year. But a lot of that had been through her efforts and energy while at Fort Polk, Louisiana. And I just bring that up because it's an amazing recognition for her time and I would say selfless service, and that's across a couple different installations, just to raise awareness, to help people, and to get them out of a crummier situation, so that what happened to us wouldn't be something that happened to somebody else out there in the Army that didn't need to happen to. So we're at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and I'll let you kind of describe it if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, like I started to notice just these really odd things happening, like within our house, and then, but also mostly within my son's breathing and respiratory issues. And so I'm like, there's something going on here. Like I don't get this. Like our house always smells bad. Like there's something going on. So we pull the
The vents
down from your air vents down. It's like just straight up filled with mold. Our carpets are filled with mold, and where our son, who's 2 years old this time, is sleeping, like it's terrible.
Directly above his
terrible.
crib.
It's terrible, and he's just like he's coughing, like he's never had any issues. Like it's been really bad. So I think beyond, we can get into all of the, ER appointments, the appointments for, him becoming, an asthmatic kid and all of these. But at the end of the day is like my big thing that I've learned is that military housing has now switched over to the private sector. However, the military has no say over the private sector who run these homes. So, I could even be in touch with the, garrison commander or the CSM of Fort Polk, but they say, well, they have 51% of the contract and I only have 49. So there's nothing I can do for you. That's literally what I was told. So, we learn throughout this is that like these military families are like we're in a really hard spot, right? And it's really hard because also like I can't advocate for my family because they now are saying that you can't even go to public court with us, right? It's just that it's military, and then Bobby's BAH goes directly from A to B. It doesn't pass through the family. It goes from the U.S. government or the Treasury directly to the company. So I can't even hold it if there's something wrong. And nor can the families hold it who have lead paint, lead pipes, like mold, like not even windows that their kids can fall out of, which is another thing that's going on. Like there's a lot of kind of crazy things that are going on within the bureaucracy of military housing. However, these are giant conglomerations, and also our congressmen and women are all involved. So it's very hard.
Yeah, and Leigh, real quick, because this specifically happened to another friend. Well, actually, I know several people that this has happened to. So two of the things that I wanted to bring up for our listeners, one is the situation. Like a lot of people don't understand in the military, when you get to a post, because we talk about the control an organization has over its people, military being kind of unique because they tell you where to live, not only like the city or the location you're going to live, but they frequently assign you the house you will occupy. And you don't have a lot to say about it, right? And I've never lived in on-post housing, so you guys can speak more to that. The other thing is the scale of it, because this is every single military, like every installation everywhere has this kind of housing. And specifically, I had a good friend of mine, and his son was a young teenager at the time, same location. This is at Fort Polk. And he started developing like respiratory distress, all these issues. A healthy kid, like I said, football player. I mean, and he started having some significant issues, took him to the doctor. They couldn't define what was wrong with him. And same thing, eventually they checked the housing and they went into the the vents and everything else, just like you guys said, mold. And his kid had been breathing it for, developed slowly over a period of time. But once they'd been there a year or something, he was exhibiting significant, respiratory issues. And I don't know if it was, I hope he got better once he got away from it, but they had moved houses once, I believe, and they ended up with the same kind of problem. And then there were just no other options, right? So I don't know if through your work and everything you've seen, what kind of stories you've heard, but I just want to make people understand, the situation the military families are in, and also the scale of this as it applies to how many soldiers' families are potentially affected by this.
Enormous. It's like, if there's no, I would say, for my my experience and my advocacy, I don't think there's any post or any, because other people say base, right? Maybe says base. Is that there's no one is not experiencing this. And the sad thing is that once the military, we went through something that's called the Military Housing Improvisation Act, I think, is MPIH, and they just brought it all down to privatization, and it was like the PPVs, right? So and the government is doing this with a lot of things right now. It's public-private partnerships. So my big thing is it sounds great on paper, but who's the advocate for that, and who's the actually one holding people accountable, right? And it's typically no one. It's just I don't know. I don't think that there's no I there's no even with our parents when they talk about living on base, it's we had the yard of the month, it's these little things that just don't happen, but also because the government cannot hold these companies accountable. And it's well documented when spouses, and myself included, I FOIA'd the Fort Polk agreement between Fort Polk and that company, and I got it back, but it's all retracted. So I have no idea what they agreed upon. However, I do know that they knew that there was mold, and that they knew that there was quite a bit of environmental impacts on these homes that would be coming to light once they built them. And they all signed the agreement. But if you get enough people in the government saying, yeah, it's good, it happens. So I don't know what the right answer is. Did
you say FOIA,
Freedom of
Information Act? Yeah, I just want to make sure that was okay.
I did that on my own. I was just I want to see what I would get back. And it took a bit. However, once I did get it back from Fort Polk, it was quite astonishing. They all knew that there was not only chemicals built into the land, but there was mold in the old housing that this company was going to be taking over. But there was I would say over 60% was redacted.
That I got to give you credit, because going after a bureaucracy is hard. It's very hard. And government contracting, this is a part that I think bugs me. So when I was at Polk at SATI there, I was a contracting officer representative for our surveillance contract, the physical surveillance contract. So nowhere near a $35-40 billion contract that is the military housing across the U.S. But even managing that contract, there's one person that was responsible. I was responsible to make sure that they lived up to their side of the bargain. But when it gets so big, like you said, how do you hold that accountable? And even if you do hold them accountable, I think I saw an article the other day that said massive, I think it was Corvius, I think is the one it was, massive penalty by the U.S. government saying, hey, you've not fulfilled your contract, you haven't gotten to this line, but they still hold the contract and they're still going to get paid. So it's how do you, and that's, we had a conversation 2 weeks ago about bureaucracies and how, especially the military, and how it looks at its people. And at a small scale, in the special operations community, you have more of a touch point, right? It's a smaller community. They look at you more as a human being and a weapon system. But as it gets bigger, it becomes that large bureaucracy that's almost impossible to really look at each other than more than a number and a price attached to it. And here's how much it costs to train you, and here's how much it costs to house you and feed you. And it becomes just a beast that really does grind a lot of people down in ways that it shouldn't. Our soldiers should not be worrying about whether or not they have black mold. I mean, my daughter was born at Fort Polk,
No, and
and
I
the doctor,
literally had,
yeah,
when we lived in Fort Lewis, I had a woman call me, like, who was stationed, like, her husband was 1-1, he was deployed in Afghanistan, was like, I'm living in a hotel room because I have mold in my house. My older kids are up with me. No, my younger kids are with me. My older kids are downstairs in this hotel room. They're getting picked up by a bus at 4:30 in the morning. It's like, it was just the most insane things. But these companies have 50-year contracts with the obligation for 75 years if they do well. Like,
Yeah,
there's obviously
it's
people that benefit from
astonishing.
that.
Yeah, it's astonishing the lack of accountability there at many levels. But it's also, on the other hand, very inspiring to see people who, like yourselves, are incredibly invested in your community, who are able to seek out and get a modicum of accountability, through your efforts.
But I really appreciate that. I think sometimes it's definitely a weird thing to go up. Like, it was really hard for me to say, like, to Bobby, like, can we go in Reuters? Like, Reuters did a piece about us, and like, that was a big thing for us. At least for me as a wife, it was like, I don't know what this would do to my husband's career, but I know that this isn't right, and I know that it can happen to a lot of other military families.
And if we wouldn't be the people to speak out against it, or just tell our portion, our story, and how it's impacted us, I guarantee there's countless others out there that don't have that same voice, and we want to make sure that they get heard as well, because that's what scares me. Is, okay, cool, I was a captain when this is going on, but what about that family that doesn't know how to tell the chain of command, and fear of getting in trouble, or fear of complaining, or just don't know how to handle it. Well, it's
crazy.
Again, we are the United States military, and if we're dealing with stuff like that, then there's that service member, his family, is not prepared or ready to go do what's asked on behalf of them. So somebody has to stand up and say this is wrong. There's a lot of people who have come out and said, yep, we're having the exact same issues across the United States at different installations. And again, I think at the end of the day, we still just want to make sure that there's some sort of awareness, accountability, and then implement change to help out our people so they can focus on being a good service member and whatever that next thing, that next competition, that next conflict might be in the future.
And ultimately, these are taxpayer-funded programs, which is the thing that I don't know that everybody understands. Like, this is taxpayer money going to pay this stuff. And I believe that there's sort of an assumption of accountability, or an assumption by the average taxpayer that stuff like this couldn't necessarily, there's something to prohibit something like this from going on. And that's where I think the piece of shining the light on it is most critical, right? Because if it's going on here, how many other places need to be, have more oversight, or need to be potentially investigated, because it is so widespread. And I know so many people that have been affected by this.
Yeah, what you guys did there too was a key aspect of leadership in developing, a sense of urgency, and through that you're able to develop a coalition of support and then effect change. So it's great to see.
Well, as Rob mentioned, that article came out with about a certain organization, like 2-3 weeks ago.
Yep.
That you were found to have not met the standard.
Yep.
You did a terrible job,
Yeah.
and your organization did a terrible job delivering the service that was required of you.
Yep.
Don't do it again.
But I would say this really quick is, like, and I don't want to just kind of dribble about this all night, but is that these organizations, I think, sometimes pick on not only people, but I would say like socioeconomic groups. So, for example, like young military families, college students, and then some of them have had applications become like prison contractors. So they know what exactly they're doing. It's right, like, you're gone in about, I don't know, 2 to 3 years. Like, you're going to put up a big fight for 2 to 3 years, and you're gone. So you probably wouldn't do it, right? But we see, like, this is their MO, and I I think it's really sad that that's what, our military and our, I would say our representatives in the U.S. Congress has picked for us, because I don't think it's helping us whatsoever.
And like you said before too, if nobody steps up, like if you, Bobby, if you as a captain and a special forces officer hadn't stepped up, that private in the 82nd isn't going to. The sergeant in the 25th isn't going to. Like those people that don't have that flexibility of who you are to be able to step up, take that risk with your career. Because we all know if you're rocking the boat in the military, like there is always a risk. Like there is a risk to that career. Like you got to assess your boss and be like, okay, is he the guy that's going to support me in this, or am I the guy that's putting a light on the organization at a high level? Because you start hearing the word congressional come around, like everybody kind of stops and goes, oh, okay, what's happening? Why do we have, what is this investigation that's going all the way up to DC? So like you have to have somebody, and I think this applies across the board to any issue, be it social or legal and a bureaucracy. Like somebody has to be that person that steps up and leads and says, you know what, I'm willing to put myself in front of this. Because then the second you do it, like you said, Leigh, like a lot of people fall in line. You're like, I've been dealing with the same thing. And either I was too scared to step up or I didn't know how. And you guys have really led the way in something that's really important. I mean, I remember when I got to Bragg in 2010 for the CA course, and it was, I think they were having, by the time I got in there, they'd had almost 9 or 10 deaths of newborns because of the construction at Bragg.
Oh my God.
And my wife was pregnant. We were having another one. We actually had our child the same night as a friend's did. We ended up in the same like kind of shared post-birthing suite. And I remember like 2 months later, we actually haven't spoken to them in a while because it became 2 months later, they lost their son. And so it's this whole thing where like people don't understand. And I have too many people that I know that are like big government, everything, like these systems work and you've got so much. And I was like, you don't understand how hard it is to be in a giant system that owns you, and then not be able to push back and not be able to see the things that happen on the outside. It's just a different perspective. And I'm really glad you guys shared it. And Bobby, Leigh, for fighting that fight, like I give you a ton of props, because I know that has had an impact on a lot of service members, and hopefully it'll get better.
I feel like we're still fighting it, but at the end of the day is that I don't think that anyone can like tell me, even if you think this company is doing the great things that they say they're doing, like no one deserves a 50-year contract. Right, like that just seems incredibly like reckless for the Army to give. So, and also with an option to extend to 75. So, I just think that I think that people should be questioning more things. That's all I'm going to say. I think that people should be questioning a lot of this.
Yeah, I want to know how many people went and worked for that company. You know, because I think it's 4 years after.
There's a lot of general officers.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think it's only a 4-year stint, so that gives you 71 more years of being able to work post.
There's at least one SF general officer who went to go work.
Oh man.
I appreciate you guys letting us bring some more light to that issue.
Yeah.
I feel like it's, it boiled over for a period of time with all the town halls, kind of circa 2019, 2020, and then just like anything else in life, big shiny other things occur, but that problem still very much exists, is not rectified. Compensations have not been put out for those people who suffered and gone through hell with their families. And, again, it's what is that next problem? When is that going to become a major thing again? Well, nothing's changed. And so thank you guys very much for allowing us just to speak on that, use, this Steinbury podcast for a small portion of that platform.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
No, thank you guys for coming on. Seriously. Like, it's been great having you both on. Thank you for being our first like non-Sinepari associated guests. Like that's a big step. Like you trusting us to put you out there and kind of go through this conversation. So I really appreciate it. I think unless there's anything else we want to kind of dive into, we've hit the major points, and this has been a great conversation. So we'll usually just go around the horn and then unless you guys have something else, Chris and Steve will round it out, and then we'll turn the floor over to you guys. You can repitch Fore Country, repitch Pineland Underground, and we'll give you guys, Bobby, Leigh, we'll give you the last word. So, Chris.
Yeah, it was great seeing you guys again. Awesome. I'm glad to hear you guys are doing so well. And this has been an adventure for us, so I appreciate you guys being a part of it too. I mean, we're, every week we learn a little bit more. We talk about some different stuff. So it was absolutely awesome having you guys on and getting to hear your story, here on our podcast. I really enjoyed it. So thanks. Wish you guys the best.
It was awesome, hearing both your stories together on many fronts, and excited to see where all those lead in the future.
All right, Bobby, Leigh, last word's yours.
I just want to say thank you. I think that for me, especially as a wife, it's so great to have people like you ask for my perspective. And this life is hard for us. And I know it's extremely hard for you guys as well. But, as wives, we kind of sit back and we evaluate what you all do. And we also sometimes have to pick up the rear when you guys are gone. And I thank you for acknowledging that. And thanks for having us on. I just think you guys are doing great things too. And I'm always here to support whatever you guys need from us. So thank you.
Amazing.
And I think the only thing I wanted to say was, I think that common moniker is the hardest job in the Army is being a military spouse. That's so true. So thanks so much for allowing Leigh to really kind of talk about how she and how we together as a team, Team Tuttle, we'll kind of call ourselves, how we've been able to go someplace. Maybe we find a small gap, or we just get to know the people there, and we try to do what we think is good as far as connecting with the community, building that sense of culture and team, and just impacting as much as we can for that little snapshot that we're there in that posting or in that assignment or at that installation or unit. And for us, you do get to do this amazing thing called being in the military. Once it's, you make the most of it. You surround yourself with great people, and it's truly an adventure. And at the end of the day, I want to be able to look back at my retirement ceremony, look at my wife and my kids, and say, hey, I'm damn proud of what we've done, the people we've surrounded ourselves with, and our ability to take every day and just continue to learn and make ourselves better. And again, this is all part of the journey. So thank you guys for letting us be part of yours, and looking forward to what's to come with Without Equal and Sign.
Yeah, I'm excited for you both. That's great.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you again for being on. I'm looking forward to having a drink with you both when I'm out in North Carolina in May. So we're going to get together.
Sweet.
We are.
Thank you so much for listening. This has been episode 8 of the Without Equal podcast. Thank you again, Bobby and Leigh, for being on the show and coming on this journey with us. So go on, check out Fore Country. I'm going to drop the notes, or I'm going to drop the website and the notes below. Donate, reach out to Leigh and Bobby and figure out how you can help. Check it out. Also, tune in to the Pineland Underground. Great podcast to hear some stories of some real heroes and some real amazing feats of heroism and just what's going on in a world you may not be too familiar with. So tune into Pineland Underground. And again, follow us. We're on Stitcher. We're on Pandora. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. Follow the Without Equal podcast and check out cinepare.com for a little bit more information on what we do. So thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in, and have a good day. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, real quick, I got a question for y'all.
Yeah, what you got, man?
Hey, so where you guys stand? Tell me about your guys' growth